Alright, so this is going to be part 2 of my basic muscle texture. This is going to be a little bit longer, so I'm going to try to draw this chest of this cadaver. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of look at my overall proportions, kind of make a block and subdivide it down so that I can figure out where the middle is and just start breaking it down into logical parts so I get my proportions more or less correct. So that's what I'm doing. I've got the video speeded up, of course. So I'm just going through, blocking in the basic shapes, you know, where the different visual events are going to take place. And I'm using my 2H pencil, making easy to change and easy to erase lines. And then once I have it blocked in, I'll go ahead and I'll use my eraser to get rid of the grid lines, most of my construction lines. And once I do that, I will get my chalk pencil and I'll start kind of laying in some of the basic light areas here. So I'm just kind of loosely putting them in, thinking about the muscles already, how they divide up, but mostly just sort of where are the big light areas. I'll get my watercolor wash, the same one I was using from the first part. And again, just kind of lightly going through while my brush is wet. I'll just think about more like making lines and doing the dark areas, thinking about the direction the muscles go. The way that the pectoralis kind of twists into the armpit and then attaches to the humerus. Sternomastoid, how it kind of goes up there. Now, once my brush dries out enough, I can try to do a little bit of dry brushing, kind of scrubbing it in. Again, I'm not trying to get every striation like in the photograph here from the specimen, but more kind of communicate the direction that the muscle fibers are going, because that's really what the main point of the illustration would be for a lot of the anatomical skeletal muscle stuff, is just what is the action of that muscle, which directions do the fibers go. So scrubbing in, keeping it light, letting paper come through. When the brush is wetter, stick to the dark areas. As it dries out, venture out into the more open areas to try to create that textured surface in the direction of the muscles. And that's about it for this one. I'm actually doing a pretty light job. So now I will get basically the same colored pencil as before. So I've got, 2B, start getting some of the details that I want. Division between the deltoid and the sternal head of the pectoralis. Moved over to that DeLeo pencil, again still graphite, really focusing in on the way the muscles separate, and particularly the pectoralis in this one, the way it twists and attaches to the humerus and goes underneath the deltoid. So there's no rule about that you do once you're done with the watercolor that you have to then go only to colored pencils. As you can see, I often go back to the graphite. It does get a little bit harder to do graphite and chalk once you start putting in colored pencils, but I often do that too, just to get a little bit more subtle shading if I feel like I needed it. So more established those muscle striations. Serratus anterior, attaching to the ribs. go back in with the try putting a little bit of yellow on the sternum here to separate it out from the other white. But then I'll go back in with the white Prismacolor, and you can use the side of the pencil. You can also make little circles to try to blend it in. Little flicking, mark making to make tapered lines, and just kind of putting in some of the lights. Again, line variation, tapering, pointing lines, continuing to try to reinforce the idea of the grain of the muscle. Trying to also think about the light source and keeping it somewhat consistent. This was a photograph I know was taken with flash photography, so it doesn't have as strong of a light source, but I'll still try to keep one in mind so I can use it for some consistency in my drawing. Moved over to the brown, dark brown pencil now. Just trying to put in some of those darker areas. A little bit more shading with the side of the pencil. Kind of use the graphite now, just put a little bit more subtle shading in there. So then I use some of the black pencil to continue developing the values, getting my darker areas. Using the tip to get those lines with variation. So I'm using the tip of the pencil to help develop the contours, and using thick to thin lines on the side of the pencil to use shading and try to show some form. I'm going to keep making these videos. I really should get some sort of music for the background, huh? So looking back on this one, seems like I probably could have used a little bit more color, but I want to keep it fairly simple, but it's ended up being fairly monochromatic, even though it does have that watercolor sort of underpainting underneath all that pencil. All right, well, hopefully this was helpful.